it's a really great way for us to get student feedback on the different programs and or services offered in the board. So thank you.
Awesome. Any follow-up questions? You're good. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any further questions, comments? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move to item number 8, Faith Community Advisory Committee. Trustee Rep, Trustee Beatty, can you please bring the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to bring the report from the Faith Advisory Committee from June 7th. I think, ironically, the weather was identical to today, back on June 7th, rather warm. The committee met and had a number of conversation points and a few action items. The first you'll see before you in the report is the one-year term positions. So trustees will recall that the committee is a new committee. It was recently struck. Among themselves, committee members determined who would sit a one-year or a two-year term in order that we can get into a natural cycle of renewal and replenishment and keep things fresh among the committee members. During this time, some of the committee members made that determination, who was going to be a one-year and who was going to be a two-year. We also received an update from our membership subcommittee, along with reviewing the Holy Days calendar, which the document will be created and provided to staff to help guide them in their work during the school year. You'll see item D, the parent handbook. This has been a long-standing project that this committee has been working on with the help of staff. The purpose of the handbook, of course, is to inform parents and community about some of the religious exemptions that are available and supports that are available as well through our system. Now, I know that we were looking at an electronic version being distributed to the committee before it got sent out, but we haven't seen it yet, although it does say September 2018. It is still September 2018. So I don't know if there's an update. I'm looking at the directory if there's an update on where we are on that progress.
Yes, through the chair, the electronic version has gone out to schools and the printed copies being done so it can be used as a teaching tool and a tool to accommodate parents with religious accommodations. So we're on track with the target date.
Perfect, thank you. And then as a kind of an offshoot of the parent handbook, some of our student reps at the committee noted that a student handbook would also be very useful for students and would contain perhaps different information that would be less relevant to parents and more relevant to students. So that is also in a draft format that went to Student Senate for their June 14th. I see nodding from the student trustees that may have happened in June. And of course, we'll see this back at our next meeting, no doubt, and be able to provide more content and more data. And then we were given a quick background on another group. A member of the Community Advisory Committee is sought for joining the system group called We Help. So members discussed that briefly. I provided an update on issues that were taking place at the board, and then committee members were able to bring updates from their various communities as well. And that, Mr. Chair, is the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Trustee Beatty, for the report. You're moving the report. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Danko. Thank you. Questions, comments, Trustee Danko?
I was just wondering when trustees might be able to see the copy of the parent and maybe the student handbooks that were created. I'm sure I'll get one as a parent at some point, but that hasn't happened just yet.
Thank you very much. Mr. Director?
We will share a copy of the digital version with trustees through one of the director's update as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Danko. Further questions? Student Trustee Prozik?
Hi, I was just wondering if Student Senate would be continue to be updated on the student handbook draft, and if so, when?
Excellent.
That's a great question. So the committee is going to be meeting again in the fall sometime. I don't have the exact date in front of me, so I'd have an update that would be provided to Student Senate through our student representatives on the committee, and absolutely we'll keep that communication flow working.
And the fact that you asked that means that it's probably going to happen. So I'm sure Superintendent Stefanian, no, she's not here. She's probably sensed that from afar, and we'll make sure that it's on or given to Paul Denemy or somebody to bring forward. So thank you for the question. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the report? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We move now to item number 9, naming of the New North Secondary School. This is a report from staff returning as a result of a trustee motion and direction. So I'll turn it over to our director, Manny Figueredo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As trustees see in front of them on page 9-1, you have the naming of the New North Secondary School, and the recommended action in front of you is that a name be chosen for the new secondary school at Melrose Avenue and King Street East, currently under construction and projected to open in September 2019, which it is on time. Before I give you a little bit of the background, you heard some of the presenters tonight, the delegation, speak about some of those guiding principles that's in our policy. It is on page 2 of the report, but a reminder that a name to be chosen that reflects the vision, mission, and commitments of our and community composition, provide inspiration to students, have community and district acceptance, be appropriate for the whole district, have local, community, district, provincial, Canadian, or international significance, and where appropriate and possible, address underrepresented groups. So what you'll see in the report on page 9.1, under the background section, is sort of a context setting again. Section A, this past spring in June, the trustees were provided through the original report the 5 names that emerged as the top 5 names in the online consultation. And you see those names in front of you: Bernie Custis, Hannah Gillespie, thank you, Nikola Tesla, Robert Morrow, and Scott Park. In B, the advisory committee brought the report through Superintendent Sue Dunlop, and 2 names were provided by the advisory committee unranked in alphabetical order: Shannon Kustasian Secondary School and Trillium Secondary School. On June 11th, the trustees set a motion for staff to consult with the students from Delta Secondary School and Sir John A. Secondary School on the following 5 names and report back with the findings in the fall. Those 5 names were Bernie Custis Secondary School, Nikola Tesla Secondary School, Scott Park Secondary School, Shannon Kustasian Secondary School, and Trillium Secondary School. In the report is an overview of the methodology. I thank Superintendent Sue Dunlop, who led, and clearly identifies in this section that we had over 350 students. The principals of both schools were the consistent presenters, and they went to grade 9 and 11 classes, as well as some grade 12. And they made slide presentations with the bios that you see in Appendix A. They also reminded the students of the guiding principles that are within the policy. And this methodology was used to ensure that we had a consistent approach with presenters, consistent bios, and the same tools were used to reduce any bias or influence on student responses, as staff's responsibility is not to influence the decision, but to be consistent with the methodology. Students were able to ask questions and then invited to give input through an online survey. And 2 questions were asked. Select the 3 names that inspire you the most, and select the 3 names that best represent your community. For the first question, the names that inspire you the most, trustees see those 3 names in front of them: Bernie Custis Secondary School, Scott Park Secondary School, and Trillium Secondary School. They're unranked in alphabetical order. In addition, the second question, the 3 names that represent your community, trustees see the same 3 names again that surfaced as themes, unranked in alphabetical order. So that is the report this evening through the chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Now we'll open the floor for questions. Trustee Van Guffen and Trustee Pattison.
Thank you. Just given the direction that we gave in June, just to the responses that we see here from the students, curious if we're looking at alphabetical order, which looks like that's what they are. But we did a public consultation, and that public consultation initially had 1,200 responses. And we got numbers. I'm a numbers person. I like to see numbers come back in. And we got, I think on that consultation, that was 1,200 people. Over 400 came back and favored the Bernie Custis name. And I think the next one was, I believe, Scott Park or so, 300 less. what I'm asking for here is, do we have numbers to support? We gave you guys a direction. We respectfully gave staff a direction to come back with responses. I'm just curious if we have, of these 5 names, or at least the 3 that we see on here, do we have some numbers to support what the responses were from students, please?
Thank you. Mr. Director?
So through the chair, the numbers that we provided are the 350 total responses we had. We did not ask students to individually choose their top 1, or we asked them intentionally to choose the 3 names that inspired them the most or that most reflected their community. And the reason we chose 3 was to adhere to the policy that trustees have set in terms of advisory committee could bring forward up to 3 unranked names. So we used that criteria. So those were the 3 names that surfaced the most out of the 5.
Thank you. Trustee Van Geffen?
So understanding that, and in light, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but we've kicked this around quite a bit. Through the chair, I'd like to put forward the name that Bernie Custis Secondary School be moved for the name of this new school.
Okay. Motion, Trustee Hicks. Is that seconded by Trustee Hicks? Thank you. The motion is on the floor to name the new secondary school Bernie Custis Secondary School. We'll go in order as per our rules. We'll begin, Trustee Van Geffen, if you'd like to speak to your motion. Trustee Hicks, I'll call on you second. And then from there, we'll open up the floor to all trustees. So first, up to 5 minutes, Trustee Van Geffen.
Thank you. So I will try to be brief with this. If I was braver in June, I probably would have moved this forward at the time. In my opinion, for what it's worth, I thought that this was the right fit. But now we've had the summer to kind of think about this and come back to it. And to me, it's only supported further by what we see here from the direction that we gave to staff. Now, I'm moving this motion because to me, it is the natural, most reasonable and logical fit, given all the information to which we have before us. I'm also moving it on a personal note, and this is what I churned over the summer. If I was braver back in June, I would have moved this back then. I have a personal connection with the Bernie Custis story, which may make some people smirk when they hear that, given that growing up in rural Ontario as a skinny little white kid. But when I was 4 years old, my parents decided to go on a trip to Brazil, and at that time they adopted what are my 3 other siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. So my older brother, I can recall growing up on the front lawn playing football with my older brother, who then went on to high school, as my siblings were the only black kids in this rural high school. And the Custis story, or at that time playing football on the front lawn, and I think of Bernie Custis, Warren Moon, Randall Cunningham. These were all big names as my brother went through, and had if the barriers hadn't been broken, he wouldn't have had the confidence to go. And he was a quarterback. He tried out for the team going through high school and became the quarterback of the high school team, inspiring not only me but many others around him. I know normally as I chair finance and in the past an audit and don't get into the personal stuff, but with this one, when this came forward, it just made sense to me. Now, when we look at this public consultation and we look at the student consultation, and there was one thing that stuck out to me with the public consultation, is that when the respondents got back, they came back with an overwhelming opinion that Bernie Custis is the right fit for this school. It's fine. We're a board of trustees. It's our decision to make. But another part of that consultation, and close to 600 people responded to that, and of those respondents, they wanted a name that they felt historically, recently, or currently contributed to Hamilton or inspiring others and represent good values. And in my opinion, the Bernie Custis name hits all 3 of those things. These are all great names. It goes without saying. Like the delegations that came forward and the names that come forward, they're fantastic. But in this fit with this high school and its location, to me, Bernie Custis, as I said, it just feels like the most natural, reasonable, and logical fit. And I want to say this to all the other committed individuals that have come out. Just because a name isn't selected through this day, whether it's Bernie Custis or Shannon Kostoshin or any other name, that doesn't take them off the list. We've got a lot of schools going on within this board, a lot of new schools going up, and your name, a name, doesn't get stricken off the list to be dismissed for future new schools. So I'll say that in this particular piece, I think that Bernie Custis is the right fit for this school, and understanding that this is normally a ward trustee, and there are 3 trustees that were part of this naming process. But now that we've kicked this around and opened this up, I feel confident and comfortable in putting this motion forward, and I would ask trustees to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Trustee Van Giffen. You never cease to surprise us. You didn't seem like a football player to us. That's what I gathered from that. Joking aside, next on the list I have Trustee Hicks. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, Trustee Van Giffen did a terrific presentation. What I'd like to do to start is go back to the process. And when we received the first report, and we looked at the numbers of the 1,281 responses, there was 427, or 35% was for Bernie Custis, and then we go down to Scott Park is 10%, and Tulsa is 10%, and so forth. And at that first meeting, we asked the officials of the reliability of the survey, and on the second page it has the limitations of when they went out to consult. And one of them was that they can't really say how reliable it was because some people could vote more than once, so they didn't have the numbers on that. And over the summer, that got me thinking, and then when I received the second report, it verified that those numbers must be correct or very close to being corrected, because of the survey for the students, Bernie Custis' name is on both questions. So that just brought both things together for me on it. So that's my comments on the process. And again, I'd like to thank the original committee and also the students. Trustee Van Giffen has stated that all these names are outstanding names for schools. It was very difficult to pick. However, it is the right fit. In my mind, there is no question. Not to repeat everything that Trustee Van Giffen has said, but going over the information and from the students, the comments made by the committee fit Bernie Custis, a trailblazer as the first black quarterback in the CFL, educator and principal, instrumental in turning young people's development, good values and significance to the general school community, a positive influence for young people, a pioneer in race relations, education, athletics, and leadership. And I'll just close that it's one, to get very personal, trustees must be careful. But I knew Bernie very well. And I had a lot to do with his coaching and his coaching ability when he was at McMaster University and when he was with Sheridan football team and the Burlington Brave football team. Bernie Custis was an outstanding coach because he was a leader. He understood how to relate to young people on the football field. In this day and age, athletics and teams are an extension of the classroom and always will be. That's how important athletics are to the educational process, and especially from this board. And Bernie was a leader. He was an educator. He knew how to talk to children, students, and players, and it's the right fit. And I'm proud to second the motion for Bernie Custis Stadium.
Thank you very much, Trustee Hicks. Next on the list, I have Trustee Pattison.
Thank you, Chair White. I'd really be interested, but not really, in the history of non-ward trustees bringing forth suggestions for schools not in the ward and not allowing trustees that represent their communities to have their say and bring forth a suggestion. Anyways, I'll try my best to say what I had to say in advocating for Shannon's name to be chosen without stemming or breaking off of the question before us, suggestion before us to name the school after Bernie. So 4 years ago, I was campaigning to represent my community. My highest priority was our most vulnerable students. In the early months of being elected, I spent a great deal of time lobbying to all of you as to why I felt we should retain a special school for these very students. Our community lost that battle, but I have continued to speak a great deal about the void from a school like Parkview or Mountain no longer being an asset and choice for those that struggle in our systems. Nonetheless, I have sat on SAL for 2 of the 4 years I've been here, SEAC once, and FNMI, the Indigenous Education Circle, for the entire 4 years, not to mention the students with special needs or undiagnosed that I have seen come through expulsions. I never thought that the long-awaited naming process for the new North Secondary School would be such a long affair. We started back in February, and here we are 7 months later about to debate this decision one last time. I find it ironic that likely my last advocacy for my community, and Hamilton as a whole, as a trustee, relates to another group that reports have shown not only struggled and have not felt welcome nationally in various ways, but locally in our education system. Although it's just a building of bricks and mortar that we are once again discussing, and the name that will shine on King Street East for many years to come, why the name is chosen, what it will mean to the community it resides in, the catchment area it serves, and what it represents to the greater city and our board as a whole is extremely important. It's no secret that I have a strong connection with our Indigenous people and have held that regard through stories my grandfather told, and more personally, starting with the fight to save Red Hill Valley. The stories I have read, or the time I have spent in circles with a tear in my eye, listening to them all tell their stories, of how they and their families have been treated for generations, how they discuss issues, the peaceful ways they open and close meetings, the sound of their language being spoken, their wonderful traditions, beliefs, inspiring unique artwork, and their overall protective spirit was at the forefront of my thoughts when people first started to talk about the Indigenous names suggested during the naming committee process. The issues we are talking about today as a community are truth and reconciliation, missing and murdered Indigenous women and the cancelled Indigenous curriculum writing sessions, LGBTQ+ as it relates to the health and phys ed curriculum rollback, and mental health as it relates to a lack of special needs resources and the some 250 students we see at SAL and expulsions yearly, all vulnerable youth in our community. This is all front and center for our staff, our students, parents, partners, and community providers. We have 3 consultations that have been done: name suggestions, naming committee, poll of students at SGEM and Delta. Which one bears the greatest weight? 1 and 3 had similar suggestions high on the list, but neither report offered any dialogue or thought process. For me, the naming committee is one that bears the most weight, not because I was co-chair of that committee, but because I heard the conversations, the questions, the thoughts, the ideas, and concerns relating to every single suggestion. Some of the conversations were brief, but all meaningful to the end goal. 5.5 hours over 2 meetings it took to come up with 3 suggestions out of 150 names. To me, this broader voice is a more balanced approach to this process. Only 13% of our 104 buildings are named after people bear a woman's name, and only 3% recognize persons of color. Those 3% are Michael Jean, a black stateswoman, Ray Lewis, a black track and field athlete, and Pauline Johnson, a Six Nations writer from the mid-1800s. If we focus purely within the Stadium District and review the names that currently adorn its signature buildings or spaces, we have Prince of Wales, King George, Bernie Morelli Community Center, Tim Hortons Field, Jimmy Thompson Memorial Pool, and Scott Park after John J. Scott. No woman and no person further representing our city's diversity. Naming school after Bernie Cuswas would add some diversity to this community, but it does not bring a strong female voice to the district. If we look at the names of our schools, we have never recognized the youth. Why not take this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to show our students the power that their voices have and let them know here and now how much we value their opinions by recognizing a strong Canadian female youth voice, Shannon Kustachin, recognized as a top 150 Canadian, who wasn't just an advocate, she was an education protector who fought for the rights of everyone to have safe learning environments. I have 5 more minutes. Of course, I don't get to use that because I did not bring forth this motion, but I ask you to think of those things and all the work that was done in a very personable, a very long, drawn-out, and a wonderful discussion that we had with our community, students, parents, teachers, staff, all came up with this suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Pattison. Next, we have Trustee Bingham.
There's a lot of reasons why each and every one of these names is perfect for a school somewhere. I still stand with my decision of what the naming committee came up with, because it was a full discussion and we did follow policy from one end of it to the other. For those who feel that it was not in their favor, I'm sorry, but that's the policy, and everything about that committee worked so hard, and we came up with the name that they absolutely felt would be the best in that community. What I didn't like about this whole thing is that the negativity that came out of it, incredible positivity on one side, negativity that came out of it for, unfortunately, the name Bernie Custis. And there was a lot of it, and yeah, we're getting used to it as trustees. After 4 years, you do. But it wasn't so much as the average person who was saying things can get past that. Some of our teaching staff also had some very harsh words. Sitting at a football game and having a teaching staff come up to you and give you a little stab about naming the New North School the wrong name. Won't even say anything. Having a teacher at a meeting actually say to me at one point, we shouldn't be deciding a name of a school on the issue of the day. Issue of the day. I'm sorry, but the issue of the day is naming the school. The issue of the day is not the oppression and the assimilation that's happened over the past 150, 200 years. We've swept that under the rug long enough. We're trying to correct that now. That's what really bothered me. I did go out to the National Trustee Conference out in PEI, or out in Halifax. And while I'm there, the issue of coming up with school names happened, and a trustee from another board said to me, you were wrong in letting them pick the name that they did. You should have had more influence over it. I'm sorry, but nothing in my policy says that a trustee should be influencing anybody on a committee. So I start to worry about that as well. What are people actually saying out there? I'm concerned about the name only because everything we've talked about so far has been about football. If this school was 2 blocks over in any direction, would we still be having this discussion? That's a big one. This is not our sports academy. As a matter of fact, our football field isn't even there. It isn't even across the street. It's actually down the road somewhere. And it worries me that naming something because we're in the football precinct isn't really the name we need for a school right now. I do stand with everything that we did say at the committee. I'm not against names, but I am wanting to make sure that people are making their decision for the right reasons, not because we're in a football precinct. Bernie was an incredible person. I actually sat at that football game, this last football game, and spoke to a woman who knew Bernie, who knew some of the trustees, the older trustees as well, and she spoke extremely highly of him. And I can see that, and I know that. And if you're going to be a teacher and a principal, you're going to. You're going to be an incredible educator. But that was the first and only time I actually had a really positive talk with somebody about this whole issue. Everything else has been extremely negative, unfortunately. We did have a ton of support, very good support in other areas that came into us. More than anything, the student voice, I knew this was going to happen. Everybody complained about our first survey. Had the biggest complaints about that first survey that we couldn't say that it was 1 vote per person. Can we actually say, that's a question that we should ask, can we actually say that every single student only had 1 vote in this? Or is this going to be, again, another one where the vote itself can be null and void, just like the first one? are we actually making the right choice because it is the right choice for the school? Or are we looking at an area that, because we're in a football precinct, because it's across the street, because we can see it, we're going to do it? I just want to make sure that whatever name comes up, we actually are voting properly. And that's my main concern with all of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Bingham. Next, we have Trustee Mulholland.
I'd like to thank Trustee Patterson for all his hard work. He's one around here that's really been dedicated to one name, regardless if I did support the name way back. I'm not making a speech, and I'm not supporting a name like Bertie Custis. I'm going to support a name that probably won't come forth, but a name I believe is best for the students. What's going to happen in that school? You put a name on a school, Bertie Custis, so what? Football player? What is that going to do to the student inside that building? The Shannon story is fantastic. My support will go, and it hasn't changed, because I put the name on there, is Nikola Tesla. It probably won't get on there, but that's the name I support. And I won't speak again because I imagine it won't get there. But this is a name that will, in fact, instruct you have to listen to those students that made a presentation in June, what they thought about the technology that would go on in that school, in those walls. That's what a school's all about. It's not a football star, baseball star. Ray Lewis was a great track we got in elementary school. He did so much for our community else. But Tesla, for the students within that building, that's the name. If it was 2 blocks further, Trustee Bingham, the school would be called Delta, because it'd be on the Delta. But anyway, that's another story. So my support is going to Nikola Tesla. I'm not going to change it. I'm not voting for Custis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mulholland. Next, we have Student Trustee Prozek.
Thank you. I'd just like to start by saying background item C should be disregarded. The student survey that was brought to students, and I would just like to compliment the staff that did it. You executed that as well as you could. But the survey should be disregarded, and I'll tell you why. Anecdotally, when I got presented to about the names, they had paragraphs under them, all right? Teachers had an influence on the students in my class's vote. Teachers spoke to the points on that paragraph, while this survey was for students. And this makes me upset, because I know some of the students in my class who are maybe iffy about some items definitely got influenced by the teachers. Imagine if this was presented in a phys ed class. I wasn't in a phys ed class at the time, but I can only imagine what phys ed teachers would say about Bernie Custis. The class they were in could have influenced this. The teacher in the class could have influenced this. The presenters could have influenced this. This survey was not monitored as well as it should have been. So I present that we should stick with the naming committee that was originally formed after very long discussions. Over 4-hour meetings were held. Parents, staff, students all had a voice in the naming of this committee. And Superintendent Dunlop did a great job of leading it, and it was based completely off consensus. And everyone went in there with previous biases to what name they wanted, and everyone came out with 2 good names that these representatives chose on. I don't think it's about what the 14 or 15 of us at this table think, or our biases, or what we want the school to be named. I think it's about the people that are going to the school, what they want it to be named, what people 50, 60, or 70 years from now will think the name is, because you never know. 70 years from now, the stadium could be gone. Next thing you know, it's not across the street from a football stadium. It's not a football school. Has nothing to do with football. Why is it, and then, sorry, I'm getting kind of passionate. So I'd say we have 2 options here, okay, if we want to be fair. We either vote on the 2 names that the naming committee presented to us, or we go back to students, again, with a more guided survey and under, you know, direct supervision of the Superintendent Dunlop, because I think she would be completely fair with it. So I put that forward. I would like all of you to consider it, because I think it's unfair that we just completely disregarded all the great work, all the great discussion that this committee had to reach those two names. Because it was a difficult time. It was not easy. As someone sitting on that committee, there was a lot of trouble choosing those two names. We didn't just, you know, look at the survey and decide, hey, Shannon's Kustachin and Trillium is a cool name. No, there was a lot of research put into this. There weren't biases when we came out. And it's difficult because we're ranking people, we're marking people. But the committee did a great job. We reached consensus on these two names, and I stand behind what the committee voted for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Student Trustee Prozek. We appreciate the comments. Looking to further debate. I don't have anyone else on the list, but I saw a nice nod from Trustee Beatty. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess first and foremost, I need to acknowledge the passion that's come forward here tonight from both our presenters and from trustees around the table, particularly Student Trustee Prozek, Trustee Bingham, Trustee Pattison. This kind of passion, I think, is good. It's healthy. But I worry after the decision is made that we are able to move forward and not be divided, not be hurt by the outcome. And I want to recognize that sometimes passion can be a double-edged sword. So I do hope that whatever decision is made, that we're able as a community to move forward, we're able as an organization to move forward. This is extremely difficult. There's 3 brilliant names presented before us, in my opinion, and I can see merit in all of them. The reason that I became a trustee, or put my name forward, rather, and in 2014 was because of a local issue with the naming of a school, and I think I alluded to that the last time I spoke on this. For me, local context is always going to be a driving force when we name a facility in our community. And when I look at the 3 names, the one that has, in my opinion, the most local context is Mr. Custis. Now, I take out the football. I omit that completely from the conversation because to this, I actually think it's irrelevant. What I see is an immigrant who came to Canada facing oppression in his home country. The first person to perform a task, he became the first person to do something in a professional sphere that had ever been done anywhere in the world. And I think that's important to know. First person of color to do that. But that in itself, those 2 items don't inspire me. What inspired me is that he stayed in Hamilton. He stayed in Hamilton, he became an educator in our board, became a principal in our board, and he devoted the remainder of his life to giving back, and he devoted the remainder of his life to our community, to making Hamilton better. And that's the part that, for me, is the overriding factor in this and why I believe this is a good name, so that when somebody looks back and says, who is this gentleman? As was noted, there may not be a football stadium across the street forever, and it shouldn't matter. But this gentleman was somebody who came to Canada. He did something that nobody had ever done before. And then instead of moving on or going back, he stayed. He stayed and he gave back to our community and worked to make it better. And I find that to be inspiring. So my support is with the name that's been presented by the mover and seconder.
Thank you very much, Trustee Beatty. Next, we have Trustee Danko.
Thank you. And through the chair, again, I'm not going to repeat what's already been said. Trustee Beatty actually captured one of the key points for me, and this is not about football. This is about a person who was extraordinary, who gave back, and has local significance in Hamilton. But I also want to acknowledge that listening to the delegations, I was choked up as well. And I think that in this process, I've learned about different names that absolutely would inspire students in our board. And I know, as Trustee Van Geffen alluded to, we have other schools that will be built that will need to be named. personally, I think I would rather if we moved away from naming schools after people. I know that people inspire others, but then it can be about one group identifying with a person and not other groups. I actually really like the name Trillium. I liked what came behind that. It was supported by the students, but I'm okay with supporting Bernie Custis moving along because the evidence also says that the community voted for it in the initial consultation. That's why we do that consultation. And it was then supported in the consultation with students. I am disappointed to hear some of the anecdotal feedback about that consultation, and I would have liked to have seen actual numbers. But I want to just say that the decision we make tonight isn't dismissing any of the amazing work, the inspiration that these other people have had. And I believe they would be fantastic names for other schools. But I will support the motion going forward tonight.
Thank you very much, Trustee Danko. I saw, Larry, you had a question. I just want to make sure it's in order, but go ahead. Your microphone.
Just a quick question to Jeff. During the meeting when we sent this back to community, you said that you talked about this while you became a trustee and that you had an opportunity to change the process, I believe, but you left the local and provincial significance on the policy, and I'm wondering why, because what is local, provincial, and federal significance? I think it's what it means to people. So I'm really curious why we didn't just remove that and why that's even on our naming processes. If every time anybody talks, they talk about local significance, which is fine, but why is our process
Thank you.
like that?
I mean, it's a good point, but unfortunately the question is out of order to the other trustee, but respectfully, you had a chance to answer it or ask it, so I hope that at least did it justice. Looking to further names or debate from trustees. Is there any further debate? I'll add myself to the list. So just briefly, in terms of my comments as a trustee through this process, and I think most trustees know that I pay a lot of attention and detail to process and good policy and governance. And the tough piece for me through this process has been some critical analysis of what happened at the naming committee, and then once it came to board, what happened, and what happened when it went back to students. Unfortunately, as much as sometimes policy appears to maybe get in the way or not be executed properly, I do think staff in this case did a great job at all levels. And I think that's important. I think so I'm just on that point, I mean, to the director, of course, Superintendent Dunlop, our principals at the schools for all of the work that they did. But when you have a lively debate and a lot of passion, obviously you're going to get conflicting support, and there's a lot of emotion. I usually say that's a good thing. And when it comes to education, sometimes it's hard to even get two people in the room to talk about it. If you can get, a good audience and over 1,000 people on a survey to start talking about education for whatever reason, that's a great thing in my books. But in this case, it's been a real opportunity to learn about all three names that have come forward. I mean, and I don't think we've heard much of it in this debate so far, but I mean, Nikola Tesla, I mean, Vic and your organization is absolutely phenomenal. And I think, it gets lost in some of that, and I've seen it over the summer as we've been in touch. The amount of work and dedication that you have for students in this city is second to none. Through graduations and scholarships and partnership and everything else that you stand for. And Tesla definitely, as Trustee Mulholland mentioned, would be an amazing name for a secondary school, an elementary school, just anything that could inspire students around science, engineering is absolutely an opportunity that we would push. So I mean, that name should not be overlooked by any means. Shannon Kustachin, I think that's a fantastic name. But there's a lot of folks, I think, in this boardroom or across the city that weren't as familiar with the name. And I think the advisory committee said that themselves. Starting out in the process, they learned a lot about Shannon. And I can say as a board, we've learned a lot about Shannon as well. It's one of the first times I received a phone call from a northern media source asking to chat about Shannon Kustachin. And all of a sudden, it's a name that I didn't immediately recognize, 2 weeks earlier. And now I'm talking, on a radio station in Northern Ontario about Shannon Kustachin, which, what can you say that except for its phenomenal influence, in terms of what she accomplished. and you just go, wow, you know, we're humbled to even have that name come forward. And I mean, it's thanks to the advisory committee who, quite frankly, used the process, challenged the process, followed the process as much as others may feel that it was maybe not the case, but use the process to actually be creative and bring forward names. I mean, it's just fantastic that, you know, the conversation moved in that direction. And then, of course, you know, trustees took the opportunity, instead of making an immediate decision, took a step back and asked students. I mean, there's a lot of different layers involved here, but the one thing I think we can be proud of is we heard from community through the initial feedback and survey. The advisory committee did their job and did a great job. We heard from students. I mean, we've engaged everyone, and I don't think there's a perfect formula. So, you know, back to my point about policies, when you get to a board of trustees or any elected body, there is no magic formula, you know, that I can point to a survey and say, you know, this number should have been, you know, a bit higher, and then I could have supported it. I'm not going to fall back on any one survey. You have to, you know, assess the situation and take a step back. Myself, I'm not a football fan per se. I'm not a football fan, but at the same time, I'm not avid in CFL, for instance. But you know, even hearing the contributions of what Bernie Custis has done, I mean, once again, you stack that name up against the other two, and you're talking about, you know, amazing accomplishments beyond, you know, I think any of us could comprehend at our own, you know, level for whatever reason. But to have any of these names attached to any of our secondary schools is phenomenal. So, you know, as much as obviously there's some contention, I think really we should shine the light, as Trustee Beattie said, on what's positive in this process. And quite frankly, if I had my way, I mean, I could point to a couple elementary schools that should have these names and a couple secondary schools that could have these names. So I don't think this is the end of the journey for any names in particular. There's a lot of opportunity here. But potentially down the road, we'll actually be maybe happy the way that this really turns out for all three names. So really what I'm trying to say is I think everyone should be proud for their efforts on this. Really lively debate, a lot of interest in education. And at the end of the day, obviously, we need to make a choice. And I mean, my sense of this whole process, I never had a preference in terms of a name. I mean, I wanted to sit back and observe the process. I'm comfortable, you know, obviously with the name Bernie Custis. I'll support the name Bernie Custis because, once again, for what it stands for, there's a really great case to be made for every name. And I'm sure, you know, all three of these individuals are somewhere, you know, smiling that they even got their names on a list because, like I said, they'll resurface on another school. I'm absolutely positive about it. So I just want to thank everyone, both as a trustee on behalf of the board, certainly thank staff as well and everyone in our community. So I think beyond this, as Trustee Beattie said, you know, I look forward to the celebrations that follow and as a result of what we've managed to accomplish in this process. And of course, at the end of the day, it's about the students. And I can tell you, you know, students, there's without a doubt, are going to continue to be inspired with the name that we choose, as well as the other two names in some capacity. So with that, thank you for everyone throughout this process. I will ask trustees if there's anyone else that has not spoken that wishes to speak. Seeing none, Trustee Van Geffen, you're the mover. Is there anything you'd like to add that hasn't already been said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in closing, this is a good discussion, which is exactly what we were asking for. It's important to know as we go through the advisory, the naming committee, the consultation from April, the student consultation. These are all meant to advise us. This is our decision to make. And now we find ourselves, this is not supposed to be a negative process. I think of the naming of my first son. There's a good point to be made here that we have to move forward positively. We're naming a great educational building that is going to be around for generations to come in Hamilton. This piece on Bernie Custis, he's an educator. He was an educator and a principal. Yes, he was a football player, but more importantly, he was a pioneer in race relations, education, athletics, and leadership. These are all very good names. But in this particular case, to the school site that we're talking about, all very good names, but Bernie Custis is a great name and a great fit. I firmly believe that, and that is why I put the motion forward.
Thank you very much. So at this point, seeing no further new speakers, will once again ask trustees to cast their vote. So the motion, not their vote, yeah, I guess their vote. The motion is once again to name the new North Secondary School Bernie Custis Secondary School. All in favor? We have trustees Archer, Beatty, Hicks, Johnstone, White, Van Geffen, Danko. Those opposed. We have trustees Bingham, Pattison, Mulholland, and student trustees Prozik and Rezvan. Thank you. The motion carries, and congratulations to the new Bernie Custis Secondary School. Thank you. On that, before we go to the next item, trustee Pattison. Sure.
Thank you. I know this has been a really passionate and sometimes argumentative. I want to congratulate Bernie Custis. I'm a big football fan, and I've learned a lot from all of this work of what your godfather, I believe you said it was, has done for the community. I thank you to Nikola Tesla. We've seen you at the programming committee. We've talked in the schools, and you're very passionate, and I've learned a lot. I've watched documentaries on Nikola Tesla, read materials, and he's certainly an inspiring man, and I appreciate the work you're doing in our community to spread his voice. And of course, to the people from my community, the Indigenous who've come here today to represent Shannon's name, and what we learned about all the people, all the 150 plus names that were on the naming committee. I'm not sure if there's an opportunity ever. I don't think we've been a part of a naming committee name suggestion in our 4 years at all. I know we've named like fields and whatnot. I'm not sure if there's an opportunity for them to speak or if that comes later at the presentation when the school opens. But I just want to thank everybody in the community for all their input and advice, and our student trustee voices, and everybody who's been a part of this. Sue Dunlop for running the process. It was a long 2 meetings. It's been a long 7 months, but we are here. We are where we are today. And I just want to say thank you.
And thank you, Trustee Pattison, as well as Trustee Bingham, Student Trustee Prozik, for sitting on the advisory committee as well. So with that, we are now on item number 10 on our revised agenda. This is resolution to committee of the whole private session. Looking for motion to move in camera. Moved by Trustee Van Geffen, seconded by Trustee Danko. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We're going to go to private session, and we'll be back in public session when we are complete. Okay, it looks like we have quorum. We are back in public session. We are rising, or at least resuming public session. We're on item number 11, reports from Committee of the Whole, private session. From just a moment ago, I'll kindly ask the Vice Chair if there is anything to report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is nothing to report at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to item number 12, oral reports from liaison committees. 12A, just a quick update on behalf of the City School Board Liaison Committee. The first meeting of this school year will be September 27th. It's a Thursday, being held here at the Education Center at 9:30 a.m. So stay tuned. All trustees are welcome. We've always had a rather good turnout from trustees. Thursday, September 27th, 9:30 a.m. Okay. So yeah, everyone is welcome, and if there's agenda items, please let us know if you have any thoughts. Otherwise, we'll circulate an agenda when it's finalized. Item 12B, Hamilton Wentworth Home and School Association. Trustee Pattison, is there anything to report at this time?
Nothing at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 12C, Hamilton Foundation for Student Success. Trustee Danko, anything to announce? Events?
Well, you just announced it when you said the name. So we are now officially the Hamilton Foundation for Student Success. And part of the rationale to make that shift in the name is to help people understand that it's not the school board. People often thought, well, why would I donate to the school board? You're supposed to provide publicly funded education. So we're excited about that, and we'll be launching a new brand. Over the summer, we had some strategic direction sessions, and so I've been working on sort of revitalizing that. We also have the Hearts Open Gala coming up, and that's on Thursday, November the 29th. And if you purchase your ticket and want to join me, before September 21st, they're $100 a person. Otherwise, they're $125. And we would love, of course, to see trustees and staff and community come out to that event. I think it promises to be amazing. We did welcome a new board member at our last meeting, and we're just sort of getting started this fall and really setting direction for the next year.
Thank you very much. Trustee Danko, any questions? Look forward to all the new exciting announcements this year. Item 12D, Ontario Public School Board Association, Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you. Just going to borrow your mic. Mine's not working.
You should borrow Heather's.
Hello? I may drop the mic at the end of this. Not kidding.
It's going to come out of your honor, right?
So OPSPA report, have a number of items to report to trustees. So first off, August 24th, there was an education funding update. So there's changes to the trustee honorarium adjustments have been suspended, as I believe all of you are aware of, or you are now. Depends. I guess it's relative. August 28th, school boards received a notice indicating that they were required to include a math improvement strategies in their improvement plans and have those submitted to the ministry by November 30th. Luckily, HWDSB already had math improvement in our board improvement strategy, as I'm sure all boards across the I won't be dropping the mic, Heather. On August 29th, the Ontario Human Rights Commission new report on accessible education for students with disabilities and how best to meet legal obligations under the Ontario Human Rights Code. So our staff would have received that report with lots of recommendations for inclusivity for our students with disabilities. Of course, municipal elections are taking place October 22nd. If you go to the OPSPA website, there is public education resources. So if anyone you know that is running, or perhaps yourself, or you just want to promote democracy, please do go to the website and promote those resources, including a trustee candidate hand guide, which all candidates should probably read through. So there's a Planning for Prosperity, that's a provincial government consultation taking place. It closes September 21st. In that, Ontarians have the opportunity to rank the importance and effectiveness of 8 different areas, including education. It's important to note that this is not the upcoming education reform public consultation, which will be taking place later this fall, and that will be on health and physical education curriculum. And then also the student, I guess the ad hoc committee that I chaired this past year and was formally passed at OPSPA this past spring. We had our first meeting last week. So I look forward to continuing to chair that meeting, and we are reviewing the policies and practices across the province and looking at ways to formalize the voice of student trustees and to just to increase our relationship both locally at our individual boards as well as with OPSPA between Ostiago. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you. That is my report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Johnson. Any questions for OPSPA? Trustee Hicks?
So trustees will recall that last year there was supposed to be an increase in honorarium that was introduced by the previous government. In the summer, there was a freeze put on all increases to all public services in Ontario, and that included the freeze to the trustee honorarium. At the same time, trustees should also, I guess, note that and be reminded that on January 1st, 2019, we will also lose or cease to have our tax exemption. So we're currently taxed on, I believe it's only 2/3 of our honorarium. So there's 2 of them. So we're losing the tax exemption. So we will be full amount. And at the same time, so the previous government had introduced increases to our honorarium. I believe it was 7%. I think it worked out to. Right. So it's we will no longer have that increase, which would have potentially compensated for the loss of the tax exemption, or just slightly less. So we're going down in honorarium.
You got out at the right time, Wes.
Yeah.
December is the old way. So the month of December, you're going to get a third off. Starting January the 1st, you don't get the third off. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't know. So it says January the 1st is when they bring it in. So you get one more month of the third off. Have fun. Right?
All right.
Heather suggested we all get our honorarium in a bulk sum in December. Let's see. She's thinking. Okay, I think we've had enough. Motion to adjourn. Greg, Dawn, and everyone else, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.